Did you hear what I was playing, Lane?
I didn't think it polite to listen, sir.
I'm sorry for that, for your sake. I don't play accurately. Anyone can play accurately, but I play with wonderful expression. As far as the piano is concerned, sentiment is my forte. I keep science for life.
Yes, sir.
Speaking of the science of life, have you got the cucumber sandwiches cut for Lady Bracknell?
Yes, sir.
And speaking of the science of life, I see from your book that on Thursday night, when Lord Shorman and Mr. Worthing were socially distanced dining with me, 8 bottles of champagne are entered as having been consumed.
Yes, sir. 8 bottles and a pint.
Why is it that at a bachelor's establishment the servants invariably drink the champagne? I ask, merely for information.
I attribute it to the superior quality of the wine, sir. I have often observed that in married households, the champagne is rarely of first-rate brand.
Good heavens, is marriage so demoralizing as that?
I believe it is a very pleasant state, sir. I have had very little experience of it myself up to present. I have only been married once. That was in consequence of a misunderstanding between myself and a young person.
I don't know that I'm much interested in your family life, Lane.
No, sir. It is not a very interesting subject. I never think of it myself.
Very natural, I'm sure. That will do, Lane, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Lane's views on marriage seem somewhat lax. Really, if the lower orders don't set us a good example, what on earth is the use of them?
Mr. Ernest Worthing.
How are you, my dear Ernest? What brings you up to town?
Oh, pleasure, pleasure. What else should bring anyone else anywhere? Eating again, I see, Algie.
I believe it is customary in good society to take some slight refreshment at 5 o'clock. Where have you been since last Thursday?
The country.
What on earth do you do there?
Well, when one is in town, one amuses oneself. When one is in the country, one amuses other people. Oh, it is excessively boring.
And who are the people you amuse?
Oh, neighbours.
Got nice neighbours in your part of Shropshire?
Perfectly horrid. I never speak to one of them.
How immensely you must amuse them. By the way, Shropshire is your county, is it not?
Shropshire? Yes, of course. Hello? Why all these teacups? And why all those cucumber sandwiches? Why such extravagance in one so young? Who's coming to tea?
Oh, merely Aunt Augusta and Gwendolen.
Oh, how delightful.
Yes, it's all very well, but I'm afraid Aunt Augusta won't quite approve of your being here.
May I ask why?
My dear fellow, the way you flirt with Gwendolen is perfectly disgraceful. It is almost as bad as the way Gwendolen flirts with you.
I am in love with Gwendolen. I have come up to town expressly to propose to her.
I thought you'd come up for pleasure. I call that business.
How utterly unromantic you are.
I really don't see anything romantic in proposing. It is very romantic to be in love, but there is nothing romantic about a definite proposal. Why, one may be accepted, one usually is, I believe. Then the excitement is all over. The very essence of romance is uncertainty. If I ever get married, I'll certainly try to forget the fact.
I have no doubt about that, dear Algie.
Please don't touch the cucumber sandwiches. They are ordered specially for Aunt Augusta.
Well, you have been eating them all this time.
That is quite a different matter. She is my aunt. Have some bread and butter. The bread and butter is for Gwendolen.
Okay. Oh, and what good bread and butter it is too.
My dear fellow, you need not eat it as if you were going to eat it all. You behave as if you were married to her already. You are not married to her already, and I don't think you ever will be.
Why on earth do you say that?
Well, in the first place, girls never marry the men they flirt with.
Oh, that is nonsense.
In the second place, I don't give my consent.
Your consent?
Gwendolen is my first cousin, and before I allow you to marry her, you'll have to clear up the whole question of Cecily.
Cecily? What on earth do you mean? What do you mean, Algie, by Cecily?
Lane, bring me that cigarette case Mr. Worthing left in the smoking room last time he dined here.
Yes, sir.
Do you mean to say you have had my cigarette case here this whole time? I wish to goodness you'd let me know. I have been writing frantic letters to Scotland Yard about it. I was very nearly offering a large reward.
Well, I wish you would offer one. I have to be more than usually hard up.
Huh. Well, there is no good offering a large reward now that the thing is found.
I think that's rather mean of you, Ernest, I must say. However, it makes no matter. For now that I look in the inscription inside, I find that the thing isn't yours at all.
Of course it's mine. You have seen me with it 100 times.
Oh, but this isn't your cigarette case. This cigarette case is a present from one of the name of Cecily. And you said you don't know anyone of that name.
Well, if you want to know, Cecily happens to be my aunt. Charming old lady, lives at Tunbridge Wells. Just give it back to me, Algie.
But why does she call herself Little Cecily if she is your aunt and lives at Tunbridge Wells? From Little Cecily, with her fondest love.
My dear fellow, what on earth is there in that? Some aunts are tall, some aunts are not tall. That is a matter that surely an aunt may be allowed to decide for herself. You seem to think that every aunt should be exactly like your aunt, and that is absurd.
Yes. But why does your aunt call you her uncle? From Little Cecily, with her fondest love, to her dear Uncle Jack. There is no objection, I admit, to an aunt being a small aunt, but why an aunt, no matter what her size may be, should call her own nephew her uncle, I can't quite make out. Besides, your name isn't Jack at all. It's Ernest.
It isn't Ernest, it's Jack.
You have always told me it was Ernest. I have introduced you to everyone as Ernest. You answer to the name of Ernest. You look as if your name was Ernest. You are the most earnest-looking person I ever saw in my life.
Well, my name is Ernest in town and Jack in the country, and the cigarette case was given to me in the country.
Yes, but that does not account for the fact that your small aunt Cecily, who lives at Tunbridge Wells, calls you her dear uncle. Come on, old boy, I think you'd much better have the thing out at once. I may mention that I have always suspected you of being a confirmed and secret Bunburyist, and I am quite sure of it now.
Bunburyist? What on earth do you mean by a Bunburyist?
I'll reveal to you the meaning of that incomparable expression as soon as you are kind enough to inform me why you are Ernest in town and Jack in the country.
Well, produce my cigarette case first.
Here it is.
Mm-hmm.
Now produce your explanation and pray, make it improbable.
My dear fellow, there is nothing improbable about my explanation at all. In fact, it's perfectly ordinary. Old Mr. Thomas Cardew, who adopted me when I was a little boy, made me in his will guardian to his granddaughter, Miss Cecily Cardew. Cecily, who addresses me as her uncle from motives of respect that you could not possibly appreciate, lives at my place in the country under the charge of her admiral governess, Miss Prism. My dear Algie, I don't know whether you will be able to understand my real motives. You are hardly serious enough. When one is placed in the position of guardian, one has to adopt a very high moral tone on all subjects. And as a high moral tone can hardly be said to conduce very much to either one's health or one's happiness in order to get up to town, I have always pretended to have a younger brother of the name of Ernest, who lives in the Albany and gets into the most dreadful scrapes. That, my dear Algie, is the whole truth, pure and simple.
I was quite right in saying you were a Bunburyist. You are one of the most advanced Bumbryists I know.
What on earth do you mean?
You have invented a very useful younger brother called Ernest in order that you may be able to come up to town as often as you like. I have invented an invaluable permanent invalid called Bunbury in order that I may be able to go down into the country whenever I choose. Bunbury is perfectly invaluable. If it wasn't for Bunbury's extraordinary bad health, for instance, I wouldn't be able to dine with you tonight at Willis's, for I have really been engaged to Aunt Augusta for more than a week.
I haven't asked you to dine with me anywhere tonight.
I know, you're absurdly careless about sending out invitations.
You had very much better dine with your Aunt Augusta.
I haven't the smallest intention of doing anything of the kind.
Amen.
To begin with, I dined there on Monday, and once a week is quite enough to dine with one's own relations. In the second place, whenever I do dine there, I am always treated as a member of the family, and sent down with either no woman at all, or two. In the third place, I know perfectly well whom she will place me next to tonight. She will place me next to Mary Farquhar, who always flirts with her own husband across the dinner table. That is not very pleasant. Indeed, it is not even decent. Besides, now that I know you to be a confirmed Bumbriist, I naturally want to talk to you about Bumburying. I want to tell you all the rules.
I'm not a Bumbriist at all. If Gwendolen accepts me, I am going to kill my brother. Indeed, I think I'll kill him in any case. Cecily is a little too much interested in him. It is rather a bore. So, I am going to get rid of Ernest, and I strongly advise you to do the same with with your invalid friend who has the absurd name.
Nothing will induce me to part with Bunbury, and if you ever get married, which seems to me extremely problematic, you'll be very glad to know Bunbury. A man who marries without knowing Bunbury has a very tedious time of it.
Well, that is nonsense. If I marry a charming girl like Gwendolen, I certainly won't want to know Bunbury.
Then your wife will. You don't seem to realize that in married life, 3 is company and 2 is none. Oh. I see Aunt Augusta requesting the Zoom password. Now, if I get her out of the way for 10 minutes so that you can have an opportunity for proposing to Gwendolen, may I dine with you tonight at Willis's?
Oh, I suppose so, if you want to.
Yes, but you must be serious about it. I hate people who are not serious about meals. It is so shallow of them.
Lady Bracknell and Miss Fairfax.
Good afternoon, dear Algernon. I hope you are behaving very well.
I'm feeling very well, Aunt Augusta.
That's not quite the same thing. In fact, the two things very rarely go together.
Dear me, Gwendolen, you do look smart.
I am always smart. Am I not, Mr. Worthing?
You are quite perfect, Miss Fairfax.
Oh, I hope I am not that. You would leave no room for developments, and I intend to develop in many directions.
I'm sorry we are a little late, Algernon, but I was obliged to call on dear Lady Hartbury. I hadn't been there since her poor husband's death. I've never seen a woman so altered. She looks quite 20 years younger. And now I'll have a cup of tea and one of those nice cucumber sandwiches you promised me.
Certainly, Aunt Augusta.
Won't you come and sit here, Gwendolen?
Thanks, Mamma. I'm quite comfortable where I am.
Good heavens, Lane! Why are there no cucumber sandwiches? I ordered them specially.
There were no cucumber sandwiches in the market this morning, sir. I went down twice.
No cucumbers.
No, sir. Not even for ready money.
That will do, Lane. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I am greatly distressed, Aunt Augusta, about there being no cucumbers. Not even for ready money.
It really makes no matter, Algernon. I had some crumpets of Lady Hartbury, who seems to me to be living entirely for pleasure now.
I hear her hair has turned quite gold from grief.
It certainly has changed its colour. From what cause I, of course, cannot say. Thank you. I've quite a treat for you tonight, Algernon. I'm going to send you down with Mary Farquhar. She is such a nice woman and so attentive to her husband. It's delightful to watch them.
I am afraid, Aunt Augusta, I shall have to give up the pleasure of dining with you tonight after all.
Well, I hope not, Algernon. It would put my table completely out. Your uncle would have to dine upstairs. Unfortunately, he is accustomed to that.
It is a great bore, and I need hardly say a terrible disappointment to me, but the fact is, I've just had a telegram to say that my poor friend Bunbury is very ill again. They seem to think I should be with him.
It is very strange. This Bunbury seems to suffer from curiously bad health.
Yes, poor Bunbury is a dreadful invalid.
Well, I must say, Algernon, that I think it is high time that Mr. Bunbury made up his mind whether he was going to live or die. This shilly-shallying with the question is absurd. I should much be obliged if you could ask Mr. Bunbury from me to be kind enough not to have a relapse on Saturday, for I rely on you to arrange my music for me.
I'll speak to Bunbury, Aunt Augusta, if he is still conscious. And I think I can promise you he'll be all right by Saturday. I'll run over the programme I've drawn out. If you will kindly come into the next room for a moment.
Thank you, Algernon. It is very thoughtful of you. I'm sure the programme will be delightful, after a few expurgations. Gwendolen, will you accompany me?
Certainly, Mamma.
Charming day it has been, Miss Fairfax.
Pray don't talk to me about the weather, Mr. Worthing. Whenever people talk to me about the weather, I always feel quite certain that they mean something else. And that makes me so nervous.
I do mean something else.
I thought so. In fact, I'm never wrong.
And I would like to be allowed to take advantage of Lady Bracknell's temporary absence.
I would certainly advise you to do so. Mamma has a way of coming back suddenly into a room that I often have to speak to her about.
Miss Fairfax, ever since I met you, I have admired you more than any girl I have ever met since I met you.
Yes, I am quite well aware of the fact. And I often wish that, in public, at any rate, you'd been more demonstrative. For me, you have always had an irresistible fascination. Even before I met you, I was far from indifferent to you. We live, as I hope you know, Mr. Worthing, in an age of ideals. Fact is constantly mentioned in the more expensive monthly magazines and has reached the provincial pulpits, I am told. And my ideal has always been to love someone of the name of Ernest. There is something in that name that inspires absolute confidence. The moment Algernon first mentioned to me that he had a friend called Ernest, I knew I was destined to love you.
You really love me, Gwendolen.
Passionately.
Oh, darling, you don't know how happy you've made me.
My own Ernest.
But you don't really mean to say that you couldn't love me if my name wasn't Ernest?
But your name is Ernest.
Yes, I know it is. But supposing it was something else, do you mean to say that you couldn't love me then?
Oh, that is clearly a metaphysical speculation. And like most metaphysical speculations, has very little reference to the actual facts of real life as we know them.
Well, personally, darling, to speak quite candidly, I don't much care for the name of Ernest. I don't think the name suits me at all.
It suits you perfectly. It is a divine name. It has a music of its own. It produces vibrations.
Well, really, Gwendolen, I must say that I think there are a lot of much nicer names. I think Jack, for instance, a charming name.
Jack? No. There is very little music in the name Jack, if any at all. It does not thrill. It produces absolutely no vibrations. Besides, Jack is a notorious domesticity for John. Oh, and I pity any woman who was married to a man called John. The only real safe name is Ernest.
Gwendolen, I must get christened at once. I mean, we must get married at once. There is no time to be lost.
Married, Mr. Worthing?
Well, surely. You know that I love you, and you led me to believe, Miss Fairfax, that you were not absolutely indifferent to me.
I adore you. But you haven't proposed to me yet. Nothing has been said at all about marriage. The subject hasn't even been touched on.
Well, may I propose to you now?
I think it would be an admirable opportunity. And to spare you any possible disappointment, Mr. Worthing, I think it only fair to tell you quite frankly beforehand that I'm fully determined to accept you.
Gwendolen.
Yes, Mr. Worthing, what have you got to say to me?
You know what I have got to say to you.
Yes, but you don't say it.
Gwendolen, will you marry me?
Of course I will, darling. How long you've been about it.
Sorry.
I'm afraid you've had very little experience in how to propose.
Oh, my own one, I have never loved anyone in the world but you.
Yes, but men often propose for practice. What wonderfully blue eyes you have, Ernest. They are quite blue. I hope that you will always look at me just like that, especially when there are other people present.
Mr. Worthing! Rise, sir, from the semi-recumbent posture. It is most indecorous.
Mamma, I must beg you to retire. This is no place for you. Besides, Mr. Worthing is not quite finished yet.
Finished what, may I ask?
I am engaged to Mr. Worthing, Mamma.
Pardon me. You are not engaged to anyone. When you do become engaged to someone, I, or your father, should his health permit him, will inform you of the fact. And now I have a few questions to put to you, Mr. Worthing. While I make these inquiries, you, Gwendolen, will wait for me below in the carriage.
Mamma!
In the carriage, Gwendolen! Gwendolen, in the carriage!
Yes, Mamma!
You can take a seat, Mr. Worthing.
Thank you, Lady Bracknell, but I prefer standing.
I feel bound to tell you that you are not down on my list of eligible young men. However, I am quite ready to enter your name should your answers be what a really affectionate mother requires. How old are you?
29.
A very good age to be married at. I have always been of the opinion that a man who desires to get married should know either everything or nothing. Which do you know?
I know nothing, Lady Bracknell.
I am pleased to hear it. I do not approve of anything that tampers with natural ignorance. Ignorance is like a delicate, exotic fruit. Touch it and the bloom is gone. What is your income?
Between 7,000 and 8,000 a year.
In land or in investments?
Oh, in investments chiefly.
That is satisfactory. Land has ceased to be either a profit or a pleasure. That's all that can be said about land.
I have a country house with some land, of course. But I don't depend on that for my real income.
A country house? Well, how many bedrooms? Well, that point can be cleared up afterwards. You have a townhouse, I hope. A girl with a simple, unspoiled nature, like Gwendolen, could hardly be expected to reside in the country.
Well, I own a house in Belgrave Square, but it is let by the year to Lady Bloxham. Of course, I can get it back whenever I like at 6 months' notice.
What number in Belgrave Square?
149.
The unfashionable side. I thought there was something. However, that could easily be altered.
Do you mean the fashion or the side?
Both, if necessary. What's your politics?
I am a liberal unionist.
Oh, they dine with us. Or come in the evening at any rate. Now to minor matters. Are your parents living?
I have lost both my parents.
To lose one parent, Mr. Worthing, may be regarded as a misfortune. To lose both looks like carelessness. Well, who was your father?
I'm afraid I really don't know. The fact is, Lady Bracknell, I said I had lost my parents. It would be nearer the truth to say that my parents seem to have lost me. I don't actually know who I am by birth. I was found.
Found?
The late Mr. Thomas Cardew, an old gentleman of a very charitable and kindly disposition, found me and gave me the name of Worthing, because he happened to have a first-class ticket for Worthing in his pocket at the time. Worthing is a place in Sussex. It's a seaside resort.
Where did the charitable gentleman who had a first-class ticket for the seaside resort find you?
In a handbag.
A handbag?
Yes, Lady Bracknell. I was in a handbag. A somewhat large, black leather handbag with handles to it. An ordinary handbag, in fact.
In what locality did this Mr. James or Thomas Cardew come across this ordinary handbag?
In the cloakroom at Victoria Station. It was given to him in mistake for his own.
The cloakroom at Victoria Station?
Yes, the Brighton line.
The line is immaterial. Mr. Worthing to be born, or at any rate bred, in a handbag, whether it had handles or not, seems to me to display a contempt for the ordinary decencies of family life that remains one of the worst excesses of the French Revolution. As for the particular locality in which the handbag was found, a cloakroom at a railway station might serve to conceal a social indiscretion, but it could hardly be regarded as an assured basis for a recognised position in good society.
Well, may I ask you then what you would advise me to do? I need hardly say I would do anything in the world to ensure Gwendolen's happiness.
I would strongly advise you, Mr. Worthing,
Yes.
to try and acquire some relations as soon as possible, and to make a definite effort to produce at any rate one parent of either sex before the season is quite over.
Well, I don't see how I could possibly manage to do that. I can produce the handbag at any moment. It is in my dressing room at home. I really think that should satisfy you, Lady Bracknell.
Me, sir? What is it to do with me? You could hardly imagine that I and Lord Bracknell would dream of allowing our only daughter, a girl brought up with the utmost care, to marry into a cloakroom and form an alliance with a parcel. Good morning, Mr. Worthing.
Ba-da-ba-bum, ba-da-ba-bum.
For goodness sake, don't play that ghastly tune, Algie. How idiotic you are.
Didn't it go off all right, old boy? You don't mean to say Gwendolen refused you?
Oh, Gwendolen is right as a trivet. As far as she is concerned, we are engaged. Her mother is perfectly unbearable. Never met such a gorgon. I don't really know what a gorgon is like, but I am quite sure that Lady Bracknell is one. In any case, she is a monster, without being a myth, which is rather unfair. I beg your pardon, Algie. I suppose I shouldn't talk about your own aunt in that way before you.
My dear boy, I love hearing my relations abused. It is the only thing that makes me put up with them at all. Relations are simply a tedious pack of people who haven't got the remotest knowledge of how to live, nor the smallest instinct about when to die.
Oh, that is nonsense.
It isn't.
Well, I won't argue about the matter. You always want to argue about things.
That is exactly what things were originally made for.
Oh, you don't think there is any chance of Gwendolen becoming like her mother in about 150 years, do you, Algie?
All women become like their mothers. That is their tragedy. No man does. That is his.
Is that clever?
It is perfectly phrased.
I am sick to death of cleverness. Everybody's clever nowadays. You can't go anywhere without meeting clever people. The thing has become an absolute public nuisance. I wish to goodness we had a few fools left.
We have.
I should extremely like to meet them. What do they talk about?
The fools? Oh, the clever people, of course.
What fools.
By the way, did you tell Gwendolen the truth about your being Ernest in town and Jack in the country?
My dear fellow, the truth isn't quite the sort of thing one tells to a nice, sweet, refined girl.
What about your brother? What about the profligate Ernest?
Oh, before the end of the week I shall have got rid of him. I'll say he died in Paris of apoplexy. Lots of people die of apoplexy quite suddenly, don't they?
Yes, but it's hereditary, my dear fellow. It's the sort of thing that runs in families. You'd much better say a severe chill.
You're sure a severe chill isn't hereditary or anything of that kind?
Of course it isn't.
Very well. My poor brother Ernest was carried off suddenly in Paris by a severe chill. That gets rid of him.
But I thought you said that Miss Cardew was a little too much interested in your poor brother Ernest. Won't you feel his loss a great deal?
Oh, that is all right. Cecily is not a silly romantic girl, I'm glad to say. She has got a capital appetite, goes on long walks, and pays no attention to her lessons.
I would rather like to see Cecily.
I will take very good care you never do. She is excessively pretty, and she is only just 18.
Have you told Gwendolen yet that you have an excessively pretty ward who is only just 18?
Oh, one doesn't blurt these things out to people. Cecily and Gwendolen are perfectly certain to be extremely great friends. I'll bet you anything you like that half an hour after they have met, they will be calling each other sister.
Women only do that when they have called each other a lot of other things first. Now, my dear boy, if we want to get a good table at Willis's, we really must go and dress. Do you know it is nearly 7?
Miss Fairfax.
Gwendolen, upon my word.
Do you kindly turn your back? I have something very particular to say to Mr. Worthing.
Really, Gwendolen, I don't think I can allow this at all.
Algie.
My own darling.
Ernest, we may never be married.
What?
From the expression on Mamma's face, I fear we never shall. But although she may prevent us, and I may marry someone else, nothing that she could possibly do can alter my eternal devotion to you.
Oh, dear Gwendolen.
The story of your romantic origin, as related to me by Mamma, with unpleasing comments, has naturally stirred the deep fibres of my nature. Your Christian name has an irresistible fascination. The simplicity of your character makes you exquisitely incomprehensible to me. Your town address at the Albany I have. What is your address in the country?
Oh, the Manor House, Wilton, Hertfordshire.
Oh, there is a good postal service, I suppose. It may be necessary to do something desperate. That, of course, will require serious consideration. I will communicate with you daily.
Oh, my own one.
How long do you remain in town?
Till Monday.
Good. Algie, you may turn around now.
Thank you, I already have.
You may also ring the bell.
You will let me see you to the carriage, my own darling?
Certainly.
I will see Miss Fairfax out.
Yes, sir.
A glass of sherry, Lane?
Yes, sir.
Tomorrow, Lane, I'm going Bunburying.
Yes, sir.
You can put up my dress clothes, my smoking jacket, my hand sanitizer, my gloves, my mask, and all the Bunburying suits.
Yes, sir.
I hope tomorrow will be a fine day, Lane.
It never is, sir.
Lane, you're a perfect pessimist.
I do my best to give satisfaction, sir.